Shock swept the country at midday on September 10, 2025, when Charlie Kirk, a well-known conservative activist, was shot and killed at Utah Valley University. In seconds, a heated campus debate turned to chaos as a single sniper's bullet toppled one of the most recognized voices in American politics. Across social media and newsrooms, disbelief turned to sorrow, and anger surged in a nation already tense with division. Kirk shaped national debate and inspired strong opinions on both sides. His sudden death rattled not only political circles, but also families, students, and everyday people who followed his work or challenged his ideas. The impact of that moment still spreads. Tighter security at universities, renewed debates over safety, and fresh calls for unity or justice. As the investigation pushes ahead, the echo of that day continues to haunt and reshape public life. Charlie Kirk, voice of a generation under fire. Charlie Kirk did not just speak. He electrified college halls, dominated debates, and gave a new language to frustrated young conservatives. Born in 1993, he was only 31 when he died, but his shadow felt much larger. He built his public identity in a time of swelling culture wars and social media storms, speaking to and for young people who felt ignored or sneered at by mainstream institutions. As the founder of Turning Point USA, Kirk became something larger than himself. A symbol, a lightning rod, and a leader for a generation pulled in opposite political directions. From campus speaker to national symbol, Kirk's rise was not subtle or slow. He filled college auditoriums, organized rallies, and used every digital tool to connect with students. His energy was quick, his answers sharp, and his confidence mattered to those desperate for clear stances in a fog of shifting campus politics. Kirk's gift was his ability to make politics feel urgent and personal for young people. Many saw Charlie as a bridge between Donald Trump's movement and a new generation. Hundreds of thousands followed his every post or tune in to his fiery podcasts. For many conservative teens and college students, Kirk's words were a lifeline. He told them their values mattered, that they deserved to be heard, and that courage in the face of cancel culture made them stronger. Facing hostility and backlash, Kirk's blend of blunt talk and hardline positions drew intense reactions. He drew crowds, but just as often, he drew protests and walkouts. College rallies with Kirk at the podium became battlegrounds for the country's most divisive issues: race, gender, free speech, and what it means to be American. Universities stepped up security at his events. Organizers worried about confrontations between Kirk's supporters and critics. National news often reported both the cheers and the jeers. He was accused of inflaming tensions for attention. His critics said he stoked division and seemed to enjoy the fights as much as the forums. To his followers, though, Kirk represented someone willing to stand firm, even when the costs were obvious. Speaking to and for a new generation, Charlie Kirk's impact extended past the headlines. For countless members of Gen Z and young millennials, Kirk encouraged strong opinions about faith, national pride, and the rights of the unborn. Parents watched as their kids found new reasons to be politically active. Supporters credited Kirk for giving them the courage to stand up on campuses and online, often in the face of hostility or mockery. Many young conservatives found their first political home through Turning Point USA. Kirk's videos and debates raised new questions and fostered argument in high school and college classrooms. Even his critics admitted that he energized a group long thought to be lost to the left. He was less a lone voice and more a rallying cry, a symbol for thousands who felt marginalized by the changing cultural climate. Under fire in more ways than one. There was always a sense that Kirk's public star came at a personal risk. Death threats and protests became routine. Critics blasted him as dangerous or toxic, but he rarely flinched. He kept traveling, recording, and debating, even as the pressure grew. In the week before his death, Kirk spoke openly about the cost of being a lightning rod. His confidence and the controversy that trailed behind him made his murder all the more chilling. For those paying attention, the danger never seemed far away. Yet, few believed the country would actually lose its voice of a generation so violently, so suddenly, and on live broadcast for millions to witness. The tension had been building for years. When the shot rang out, it was not just an attack on one man, but a moment that told a larger story about division, risk, and the steep price of speaking out. The Utah Valley tragedy. What happened on September 10, 2025? The sun was bright that Wednesday at Utah Valley University, but trouble crept in where no one expected it. What began as a lively campus debate changed, in one shattering moment, into a tragedy that marked a turning point for a country. The fallout of that day rippled far beyond the campus grounds, leaving a community in shock and a nation searching for answers. The day unfolds, a packed campus event. Students gathered by the thousands to see Charlie Kirk, who was in the middle of his Prove Me Wrong campus speaking tour. The energy in the crowd was electric. Some came as fans, eager to hear from a leader they trusted. Others arrived intent on pushing back against his views. Just past noon, Kirk took the stage in an outdoor quad. Security presence was visible, but not overwhelming. Many events during his tour had heavy protection, but here at Utah Valley, the atmosphere felt more relaxed. Students milled about, protest signs bobbed above heads, and cameras from streaming platforms filmed every movement and word. The shooting, a moment of chaos. At 12:13 p.m., a sharp crack sliced through the debate. Kirk fell, struck in the neck by a single bullet. In an instant, everything changed. Screaming and confusion spread through the crowd. Cell phones captured the eerie silence after the shot, then the stampede as people tried to find safety. Witnesses later described how the shooter, unseen by most, had positioned himself on a low rooftop above the quad. Within seconds of firing, he leaped from the roof and melted into a patch of trees near the campus. Both the gun and a bag of unused ammunition were left behind, adding to the strangeness and planning that went into the act. Panic swept over the site, forcing a lockdown across campus as sirens wailed and police flooded the area. Search for the shooter and first response. Law enforcement arrived within minutes. The event, broadcast live and instantly shared across social media, brought a swift response from campus police, the Orem Police Department, FBI, and ATF. Officers cleared buildings and swept dorms. The suspect, however, was gone. Investigators discovered shoe imprints, a forearm impression, and a palm print on the rooftop as they pieced together the shooter's escape. Later that afternoon, officials confirmed that Kirk had died at the scene, sending a tremor of grief out through families, faculty, and followers nationwide. Campus and community in shock. The heart of campus, once noisy with debates and protest chants, went silent. Administrators locked down all buildings. For days, students were told to stay home, and classes remained canceled. The grief was sharp and public, especially when national leaders weighed in. Condolences from across the political spectrum poured in, even from those who had once traded barbs with Kirk. Candlelight vigils bloomed outside the Student Center as crowds came together not just in sorrow, but in fear. With the gunman still on the run, fear lingered in hallways and coffee shops. Some wondered if any public figure was safe anymore, or if violence had now become the final answer in political fights gone too far. The investigation, clues and uncertainty. The FBI led the investigation, combing through security videos, social media posts, and leads from witnesses. Video footage released later showed the shooter leaping from the rooftop just moments after the attack. In the woods nearby, police recovered the rifle and backpack packed with extra magazines, samples that would yield crucial DNA and fingerprint evidence in the days to follow. Detectives pored over clues, desperate for a breakthrough, while the public watched every update play out live. The search was relentless. Officers urged anyone with information to step forward, knowing that each detail might bring them one step closer to closing the case. An unhealed wound. The physical evidence began to tell a story, but it never fully answered the question of why. For those at Utah Valley University, and for many watching around the world, the tragedy of September 10, 2025, marked an end of innocence. That day left behind not just grief, but new wariness about even the most ordinary gatherings. The weight of that moment hung in the air, as if waiting for someone to explain how something so permanent could happen in a place built for open minds and open debate. The hunt for the killer, evidence and investigators. When a familiar voice is silenced in broad daylight, the urge for answers grows stronger than fear. The shock that surged through Utah Valley University on September 10 did not slip away after sirens faded. Instead, it became a storm of questions. With a nation glued to every update and students still wary to return, it fell to investigators to keep hope alive and bring clarity to the chaos. Their hunt for the person who pulled the trigger became a race against dread, disinformation, and time itself. The first hours, sifting through panic for clues. Every murder scene hides stories, and this one, played out on live feeds with thousands watching, left a trail. Investigators worked minute by minute, documenting evidence before rain or chaos could wash it away. Officers covered the quad where Charlie Kirk fell, while others sprinted toward the rooftop of the Lucy Center, racing to gather anything the shooter may have left behind. Key evidence found in those first hours included shoe prints along the rooftop edge, with clear tread patterns. A forearm and palm print pressed into the dusty gravel, showing a fast exit. Surveillance footage of the shooter leaping down, then fleeing toward nearby trees. Each detail drew a map, showing how far the attacker planned, where he stopped, and where he ran. Piecing together a portrait, combining old-school detective work and new tools. Modern investigations mix sweat and science. Detectives stripped the rooftop for hair, fibers, and skin cells. Hopping DNA would reveal the suspect's identity. They took moldings of prints and sent them to the lab. Meanwhile, teams scanned cell phones for location pings and security cameras up and down campus walkways, building a minute-by-minute movement log of the shooter. Digital evidence played an outsized role. Footage from dozens of phones and campus feeds gave them not just a blurry outline, but a clear, shareable image. The video of the rooftop jump reached the FBI within hours. Forensic examiners traced the path of the bullet, confirming the attack was intentional and almost surgical in precision. The evidence trail expands, from scene to suspect. People watched as police combed the nearby patch of trees for anything the killer might have left. Their search paid off in dramatic fashion. A high-powered rifle was recovered with an attached scope, its serial number filed off. Next to it, a backpack bulged with unused magazines and a packed water bottle. The rifle and bag didn't just tie the event timeline together. They added DNA, fingerprints, and traces of clothing fibers, funneling the work toward a clearer pool of suspects. By late evening, labs across Utah lit up with activity. Forensic experts tested swabs, hopping for a direct match in the system. Social media added more puzzle pieces, as students uploaded photos and video clips that captured unique details from the shooter's escape. A break in the case. Identity revealed, pressure mounts. The first big break came when a fingerprint match pointed to Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old from southern Utah. The news lit up every newsroom, and almost in real time, rumors tangled with facts across social platforms. With fuel on the fire, pressure grew for law enforcement to bring Robinson in alive. Robinson, reportedly afraid for his safety, surrendered without resistance after communicating with a local attorney. Though the moment offered a small breath of relief to the shaken campus, it raised fresh questions about the motives and deeper planning behind the attack. Investigators under the spotlight. High-profile murders put every investigator's move under a microscope. The FBI and local police, joined by forensic analysts and digital experts, faced the task of not just solving a crime, but restoring public trust in a battered community. Every press conference drew national attention. Each leak or slip threatened to tip the scales of public opinion. Investigators poured over. Ballistics and bullet trajectories. The suspect's online history for threats or ties to extremist groups. Communication, logs from burner phones, or encrypted apps. Background interviews with family, friends, and former classmates. The team brought haunting questions to every interview. Was Robinson acting alone? Did warnings get missed? Were the shooter's steps shadowed by anyone else in the crowd? Living with uncertainty, the search for motive. The investigation chased evidence, but motive proved harder to pin down. Prosecutors reviewed manifestos found on social media, but warned against drawing fast conclusions. Robinson's background sketched a figure shaped by anger and isolation, not by clear political ties, according to early police statements. Even as new evidence surfaced, uncertainty refused to let go. For investigators, every overnight update could spark another lead or open another wound. The story, like a scar, stayed fresh. The case continued to challenge the patience of the country and the resolve of those committed to finding the whole truth. A world reacts: outrage, mourning, and the political divide. When news broke of Charlie Kirk's assassination, it was like time froze, just for a moment, everywhere at once. The initial shock lit up phones across every time zone. People wept, argued, and clung to the screens, searching for words or reasons. As details spread, the world's reaction formed a storm of emotions: raw grief, fiery anger, and a bitter struggle over what it all meant. This was not only about the death of a public figure, but also about what had been unleashed: a national wound cut wide open for all to see. Outrage, anger, and shock spark around the globe. The first punch in the gut was anger. Both sides felt it, though for different reasons. Millions woke up outraged, demanding answers. How could something like this happen, and who let it happen? Crowds worldwide gathered in city centers, some raising fists or signs in protest. On social media, the news traveled faster than wildfire, comments stacking by the second. People condemned the violence regardless of their politics, calling the act cowardly and an attack on all of us. Figures on the right spoke of betrayal. Some called it a sign of rising hatred toward their side. Many on the left, even those who clashed with Kirk's views, recoiled at the sheer violence and what it might unleash. The anger was personal for many, but it also felt collective. Like society had crossed an unseen line, and now no one knew what would come next. Mourning, grief in public and private. Before the anger could settle, grief swept across the country. It started with candlelight vigils on college campuses, but soon reached church altars, house parties, and kitchen tables. There was a hush at Turning Point USA headquarters as friends and supporters traded hugs and tears. Former President Trump ordered the nation's flags at half-mast, calling Kirk a legendary voice lost too soon. Leaders around the world, from London to Sydney, sent words of support and sorrow. Some found comfort in unity, even briefly. College rivals and old friends set aside arguments just to remember a lost life. In schools, students painted memorial banners. On news networks, the story ran day and night, interwoven with calls for calm, poetry, and prayers. Even those who had never agreed with Kirk's views paused to honor the idea that words, not violence, should decide our future. The political divide, lines hardening and voices rising. Yet for all the shared outrage and mourning, the days after Kirk's death laid bare how divided people have become. The event felt like a national mirror, every crack in our politics, every old argument, reflected and amplified. Commentators on the right blamed political rhetoric and what they called the normalization of hate against conservatives. Progressive voices warned against letting the tragedy become a weapon for new crackdowns on speech. Misinformation ricocheted through online spaces, with wild theories and accusations blurring fact and fiction. Social media showed the divide most clearly. Some posts honored Kirk's work, while others sowed doubt or hate, with digital mobs fueling tempers. News outlets argued over the cause. Was the politics of the moment to blame, or just one disturbed mind? Even in mourning, people struggled to agree on the meaning of the killing. The aftermath split along familiar lines, yet with deeper intensity. National leaders, sensing the risk of more violence, pleaded for restraint and respect. Pundits clashed on live TV. Activists of every stripe held their breath, wondering if this could push things past a breaking point. The world watches and weighs in. This wasn't just an American tragedy. It echoed beyond borders. Governments in Europe, Australia, and Latin America issued statements mourning Kirk and condemning the attack. Some leaders called for deeper respect for democracy. Others warned that political violence anywhere threatens freedom everywhere. People everywhere debated what the assassination said about American life. Was it a sign of chaos, or proof that even strong countries can stumble? In global capitals, talk shows and newspapers covered every angle, pointing to the risks in today's political climate. At times, the response bordered on fear. If this could happen to Charlie Kirk, was anyone in public life safe? Yet even as the story circled the globe, it reignited a conversation, not just about Kirk, but about why the world feels so brittle, so ready to explode. An era exposed. The reaction to Kirk's assassination did more than draw headlines. It exposed deep hurts, sharpened old arguments, and for a while brought people together before splitting them once more. The sting of his death showed how close the surface of peace sits to something much darker. For days, everyone looked at each other differently. Friends reached out to friends. Strangers argued online and in public squares. A nation, already weary of conflict, felt its pulse quicken. The world watched not just what happened, but how Americans would choose to respond in the shadow of an act that changed everything in the blink of an eye. Political violence in America, a growing threat. Political violence did not spike in a vacuum. It crept in over years, rising just out of sight until moments of chaos made it impossible to ignore. As people mourned the death of Charlie Kirk, another truth became impossible to avoid. America stands at a crossroads where the rules of debate and protest are fraying, replaced at times with fear and the threat of bloodshed. The signs of this danger were written long before September 2025, building one small but dangerous step at a time. A nation on edge, the return of political violence. Over the past 2 years, America has faced a surge of threats and real violence tied to politics, even as regular violent crime has dropped nationwide. Ordinary days have carried new undercurrents, a sense that division could turn into direct conflict with little warning. Incidents once seen as shocking have started to feel almost familiar for many. Threats against politicians and public officials have jumped, with thousands reported last year alone. Lone attackers and small groups, sometimes driven by online anger, are almost always behind these acts. Every high-profile case, whether it results in injury, death, or a close call, shakes public trust further. These acts are not just statistics. They create a low buzz of dread for anyone in public life. When a politician or speaker steps onto a stage, the threat feels real, even routine, for their staff and supporters. Why the risk keeps growing? People might think lower crime rates would bring a sense of calm. Instead, political violence is marching in the other direction. Several factors have helped it build and stay. Fierce political division. Deep grudge matches over issues like the 2024 election, culture wars, and trust in institutions drive some to see the other side as enemies, not rivals. Online radicalization. Social media can turn anger into action, linking angry people and giving them instant ways to threaten or plan violence. False claims and misinformation. When voters believe lies or get locked into echo chambers, it becomes easier to justify extreme actions as defending democracy. Weak boundaries. Rallies, protests, and even town halls often lack the strong separation between public figures and angry crowds that existed decades ago. Before, physical violence over elections or ideology seemed like a story from another country or a darker chapter in American history. Now, it is a reality of daily life for elected officials, activists, and even ordinary citizens who dare to be vocal. Lone offenders and small cells, a new American threat. The biggest shift is who commits this violence. Gone are the large, organized mobs of the past. Today, lone individuals fueled by personal grudges or wild online conspiracies account for most attacks and attempts. Law enforcement sees this pattern again and again. Attackers rarely fit a simple profile, but many have shown warning signs missed or ignored by people around them. Most act alone. sometimes after sharing threats online or in small chat groups. They move quickly and choose targets who seem easy to reach, like speakers at public events or local officials who lack much security. This scattershot, unpredictable threat spreads fear far beyond those directly targeted. Any public event can feel like a potential danger zone. The normalization of political threats. Perhaps the most chilling change is how many Americans now accept or even expect the risk of violence if politics feels too tense. Some polls show a rising number of people, on both left and right, see force as sometimes justified in defense of democracy. It's not a majority view, but it's sharper than in decades past. This new normal exacts a price. Public officials consider quitting, fearing for their families. Young activists hesitate to speak out, worried about attracting threats. Audiences come to rallies shaken, checking exits and keeping a wary eye on rooftops or passing cars. These pressures build up. They simmer in daily conversation, in whispers among politicians and warnings from police chiefs. Who wants to step onto the stage when the cost might be everything? Building resilience. Can anything stem the tide? Communities are not just sitting ducks. They fight back with grassroots safety training, better event planning, and online monitoring for threats. Police and security experts now run drills for worst-case scenarios at even small-town events. But trust feels thinner by the month, and no wall or metal detector can erase the anxiety that now hangs over politics. Groups who track violence urge simple, local steps that help, such as rapid response units for online threats, de-escalation teams at protests or debates, mental health check-ins for those under heavy stress, open forums that actually allow people to ask questions and be heard. Still, danger feels ever-present. For many, the shadow that fell after Charlie Kirk's shooting never lifts. Each new threat or attack inches the country closer to wondering if violence is now part of the American way of arguing, not just a rare horror. The future teeters at the edge, as Americans must decide if this is the new normal or if the tide can be turned before more lives, more hopes, are cut short. Charlie Kirk's killing marked a breaking point that still sends shockwaves through every campus and living room. The loss of such a young but forceful leader lands hardest on those who saw in him a new way forward, a chance for fresh voices to shape what comes next. His death spotlights the risk young activists face when public life turns deadly and reminds us what is at stake when debate's boundaries fall away. As the investigation presses on, with the suspect in custody but motives and deeper roots still under review, big questions remain unanswered. The uncertainty lingers. Will this be the moment the country steps back from the edge, or just another bitter chapter? Kirk's memory now challenges us not just to mourn, but to act, to defend speech over violence, to shield our forums, halls, and streets from the poison that silence and fear bring. America is wounded but not beyond hope. Every person who believes in open argument and peaceful change bears a piece of that responsibility. Pausing to reflect on unity is not weakness. In these times, it's the strongest thing we can do. The story isn't finished. The next page depends on all of us. Thank you for watching and for thinking hard about how we keep our values alive.